He said this was just procedure, in minutes. Jack, just to wrap things up. He said it the way people say weather's fine or traffic was bad. Flat, harmless, inevitable. I said, sure. I'd been wrapping things up for 15 years. My name is Jack Shepard, Operations Manager. 15 years keeping this company running like a clock. Precise, predictable, almost invisible. That's what good operations are. The gears you never see, the hands you trust without looking. Last Friday, my manager called me into a meeting I didn't schedule. The subject line said, Alignment Update. That's corporate for bad news with coffee. The tone was polite, the decision already printed in ink. He used words like realignment, culture fit, fresh direction. I didn't use any. I just listened to the sound of the air conditioner clicking on. Once, twice, and watched the red second hand on the office clock tremble above the 12 before it fell. The room was quiet enough to hear time deciding who mattered. I knew the pattern. Every company has one. You build systems, fix crises, keep people safe, until one day someone half your age presents your ideas as innovation. They call it progress. You call it déjà vu. He kept talking. I don't remember half of it. What I do remember was the way his eyes avoided the folder in front of him, like it might catch fire if he looked too long. When it was my turn, I just asked, when's the exit interview? He blinked, surprised. Monday, 9 a.m. I nodded, signed the paper, and left. No argument. No emotion. My signature looked steady. It always does. That's the trick. Keep the handwriting calm when the world around it isn't. That night I got home at 7:45 p.m. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that sounds like someone took the batteries out of life. The kitchen smelled faintly of dust and reheated coffee. The clock on my living room wall had stopped at 5:30. The battery was dying. I didn't replace it. I wanted to remember that moment. The stillness of something that used to measure time, now perfectly still, yet technically right twice a day. Justice works like that sometimes. Not loud. Not fast, just precise. I poured myself coffee, the real kind, black and old. Then I opened my laptop, not to write an angry email, not to plead or explain, just to open the system logs. That's where I live, really. Logs, timestamps, and silence. 3 weeks earlier, procurement had added a new vendor. 3 invoices, $87,000 total. Not huge, but not small either. Big enough to notice if you're looking, small enough to hide if you're not. I wasn't the final approver, just a recommender, but I still saw the signature. My manager's login at 11:23 p.m. Friday night. After hours. After everyone was gone. The vendor name didn't mean much, but the address did. I'd seen it before. A quick search. 5 seconds. Maybe 6. And there it was. The owner's name. Same last name as my manager's brother-in-law. Same man from that Thanksgiving 2019 photo he once showed me at lunch. Turkey, wine, family, smiles. I stared at that image on my monitor for a long time, not because I cared about betrayal's old news, but because of the precision. The sloppiness offended me more than the lie. I took 3 screenshots, saved them into a folder named Clock. Then I sat back, took 1 sip of coffee, and opened a stopwatch app, Dirjudro, Choose. I let it run. Not because I needed to time anything, because timing was everything. I remember the memo that followed. 12 words. That's all it took to erase 15 years. Leadership realignment announcement. Congratulations to Ethan Cole as Ops Director. It arrived Monday morning, 8:14 a.m. sharp. I know because I timestamped it. I sat at my desk, the one facing the production floor, and read it twice. 12 words. My name wasn't one of them. I didn't hate Ethan. You don't hate the knife. You hate the hand that guides it. He was articulate, fast, perfect for presentations. the kind of guy who says great synergy with a straight face. Once he told me, "Jack, I've learned a lot from you. But you know how culture changes," I nodded. Culture. The most elegant synonym for "we're done with you." That same week, they moved my desk from the glass office overlooking the floor to a cubicle near the supply room. The chair was lower, one armrest missing. The new one creaked when I leaned. I didn't say a word. People think lowering your chair lowers your worth. It doesn't. The process. That's what defines worth. The process always remembers who built it right. Every night that week, I walked the floor before leaving. The machines, the screens, the hum of stability, all of it still mine in rhythm if not in name. I remembered what I'd built. 17 SOPs, 5 emergency drills per year, yet 2 power outages, 2016 and 2018, both resolved without a single missed shipment. 37 a.m., during that blizzard, my phone rang. They needed me. I answered. Always did. None of that made it into any realignment memo. Ethan's changes began immediately. He called it optimization. I called it amputation. He cut 3 small mid-shift checks, saying it saved 11 minutes per cycle. I didn't argue. I added 1 final end-of-shift check. I didn't announce it. I just wrote it into the process log. Silence is sometimes the most efficient correction. At 4:19 p.m., one afternoon, he stopped by my cubicle. "We're testing a new vendor. Faster turnaround, lower cost?" I asked. "Procurement cleared it." He smiled. Of course. The next week, the 3 invoices appeared, $87,000 in total, divided into $29,000 each, right under the $30,000 limit that required CFO approval. I didn't confront him. I started a habit, 9:12 p.m. every night, take a screenshot of the dashboard. Not for revenge, for documentation. Because numbers can't argue, but they never forget. The screenshots showed patterns, repetitions, timing. Each approval came late Friday night. Same pattern. Same hand, same system. Then came the meeting invite. Exit interview, Monday, 9 a.m. That night, I sat alone in my car in the empty parking lot. The sky was pale with factory lights, the windows fogging from my breath. Looked at my phone. 9:52 p.m. There's a moment in every man's career when he realizes he's not fighting a person. He's fighting inertia. The system he built now runs without him. And maybe against him it doesn't hate him. It just forgets he exists. That realization doesn't make you angry. It makes you precise. I knew I couldn't stop what was coming, but I could decide when it started. So I set an alarm for 9:01 a.m., not 9:01, because justice, like a clock, is only right when it's exact. 窗体地短. The HR office on level 3 always smelled the same. Paper, disinfectant, and a hint of burnt coffee from the shared pot. The kind of place built to look neutral, so no emotion could survive too long inside it. The blinds were half open. Light fell in narrow, sharp lines across the table. 3 chairs, 1 clock on the wall. White face, black hands, the second hand jerking in clean 1-second ticks. I arrived at 8:57 a.m. I always arrive 3 minutes early. Predictability, to me, isn't a habit. It's armor. I carried 2 envelopes, one thick marked A, one thin marked B. At 8:59, the door opened. Linda, from HR, walked in first, tidy, polite, overprepared. Ethan Cole followed, the new operations director. His smile was the kind that doesn't reach his eyes. He greeted me with a short nod, maybe expecting tension. He didn't get any. "Morning, Jack," Linda said softly, arranging her papers. "Thanks for being on time." "Always," I replied. She explained the process: exit paperwork, benefits, COBRA, badge return. "Shouldn't take more than 15 minutes, she said. 15 minutes, I echoed. "That's efficient." Ethan folded his hands, leaning back like someone watching a slow game. "Jack," he started, "I know this isn't easy. The company's moving toward a different model. More agile, more digital. You've done great work. No one questions that. But, well, direction changes." Direction. Such a small word for erasing people. I nodded once. No reaction. Just waited. The clock clicked to 9. The second hand paused at 12, then dropped. 9:01, I reached for envelope A. I brought a few. Not Ethan smiled thinly. Feedback for the Tran. Something like T.I. opened the envelope and placed a stack of clipped papers on the table. 17 pages. A Timel, 3 vendor invoices, I said, totaling $87,000. Approved at 11:23 p.m., Friday, using your login, Ethan. The vendor, Hart and Bright, LLC. Registered owner, Michael Hart. He blinked, hesitated. "Jack, I think you're misreading the—" "Michael Hart," I continued, "is your brother-in-law. Thanksgiving 2019 photo. Same address as the vendor registry. No conflict of interest disclosure filed." Linda's pen froze above her notebook. "Jack, are you alleging misconduct?" "I'm not alleging anything. Allegations are emotional. I'm presenting documentation." I turned to page 2, my 9:08 a.m. email requesting due diligence reports. Page 3, my 4:16 p.m. reminder. Page 4, a chat screenshot. "Jack, I'll handle it." Ethan shifted. "That's out of context." "Context is a luxury for people with clean logs," I said. Linda's expression stiffened. "We'll need to review this with compliance." "Good," I said, "because I've already CC'd them. They should be on their way." Ethan exhaled. "Jack, this isn't necessary." "Neither was approving invoices at 11:23 on a Friday night," I said, voice steady. The door opened again. Calvin, head of compliance, walked in holding a tablet. "Got your email, Jack. Mind if I take a look?" "Please," I said, sliding the stack toward him. He flipped through the pages. His eyebrows rose slightly when he saw the timestamps. "These are accurate." "Verified against system logs," I said. "Server runs UTC-5, local time matches." Ethan tried again. "Those were test entries." Calvin looked up. "You filed an $87,000 test entry?" Silence. Linda cleared her throat. "Until compliance reviews, we should pause the exit process." "Agreed," Calvin said. "Jack, can you stay while we export the audit logs?" "Of course," I said. "I have 45 minutes before my calendar clears permanently." Calvin half smiled. That should be enough. He connected his tablet to the network. Within seconds, the logs appeared. Lines of text, numbers, and truth. He pointed to the approval IDs. Ethan's login, same timestamps. 3. Calvin looked at Ethan. "You understand this triggers Policy 4.3. Automatic freeze of financial privileges pending review." Ethan's face drained. "This is a misunderstanding." Calvin nodded calmly. "Then we'll clear it up, transparently." Linda's hand trembled slightly as she wrote notes. I noticed. She wasn't used to justice arriving on time. When Calvin finished, he handed me back the folder. "You'll get a formal statement request later today. Thank you for documenting this." "I document everything," I said. "That's why operations run." The clock hit 9:17. 15 minutes exactly. Procedure complete. Compliance kept me in the room for another 30 minutes. While Calvin coordinated with IT, Linda offered me coffee. I declined. I'd rather taste silence. Ethan sat still, his tie slightly crooked now. He looked smaller, not weak, just suddenly aware that precision cuts both ways. Calvin reviewed the export line by line. Each of these logs shows override actions on vendor data. "Jack, did you trigger any?" "No," I said. "My credentials end at recommendation authority." "Ethan holds final approval." He nodded. "Confirmed," Linda broke the silence. "Jack, I appreciate your professionalism. Most people—" "I'm not most people," she smiled faintly. "Clearly." Calvin finished the export, signed a digital acknowledgement, and sent it to the legal archive. Then he stood. Ethan, until further notice, your financial access is suspended. I suggest you refrain from making additional authorizations. Ethan rubbed his temples. You're making a mistake. No, I said. You made 3. $29,000 each, he glared. You think this gets you your job back? I didn't come for my job, I said. I came for timing. The room fell still again. Calvin checked his watch. 9:42. You're free to go, Jack. HR will finalize administrative closure once the review concludes. I nodded, stood up, and placed envelope B on the table. What's that? Linda asked. Backup copy, I said. Redundancy is the backbone of reliability. Then I handed her my ID badge. You'll need this for the report. Jack, Ethan began. I turned to him, calm, measured. Don't thank me. Just fix the system. It deserves better than both of us. He said nothing. I walked out. The hallway was quiet, that mid-morning lull when emails slow and machines hum in rhythm. I passed the glass wall of the operations floor. Through the reflection, I could still see the clock from the HR room. 9:45. The second hand was moving. Steady. Predictable. Exact. Outside, the air felt colder than I remembered. I stood by my car and watched the office building, the place I'd given 15 years of my life to, now reduced to a structure of glass and repetition. I didn't feel anger, just symmetry. Somewhere inside, a process had started at exactly the time it was supposed to, 9:01 a.m., and that was enough. 3 days later, my phone buzzed at 6:42 a.m., an internal number. Jack Shepard? A calm voice said. This is Calvin from compliance. The audit's complete. I didn't answer right away. The morning light came through my blinds in stripes, the same pattern as that HR office. I'm listening, I said. He spoke like a man measuring every syllable. The investigation confirmed unauthorized vendor relationships. The director approved transactions without disclosure. The board will be briefed this afternoon. We'll need you for a statement. I'll be there, I said. He hesitated. You should also know. The COO read your documentation. They're reinstating a new compliance checkpoint. Your process, actually. The Shepard sequence, they're calling it. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Small, private. Good system, I said. Calvin exhaled through a half laugh. They think so, too. When the call ended, I stood in my kitchen. The clock on the wall was still stopped at 5:30. I left it that way. Some things deserve to stay frozen. By 9 a.m., I was back in the building. Visitor badge clipped to my jacket. Familiar but distant. The reception desk had new flowers. Someone had changed the scent diffuser. Lavender, not lemon. Minor updates. Surface change. The elevators opened on level 3. As I walked through the corridor, people glanced up. The looks were different now. Less pity, more curiosity. The quiet kind that spreads faster than gossip. Calvin met me at the conference room. You ready? Always. Inside were 4 people. 2 from HR, 1 from legal, 1 from the board. Ethan sat across the table, pale, tight-lipped, hands folded like prayer without belief. The chairwoman started. Mr. Shepard, we've reviewed your materials and the findings. Thank you for your cooperation. You're welcome, I said. She continued. Mr. Cole has offered his resignation effective immediately. Ethan didn't look at me. He stared at the table, jaw tense. The chairwoman went on. We are also implementing your audit framework as standard policy. Calvin added, we've renamed the procedural module. It's called the Shepard Clock. The words hung there. For a man who spent 15 years being invisible, hearing his name attached to structure, not scandal, meant something. Not glory, just order restored. Ethan finally spoke, low but steady. You could have handled this privately. I met his eyes for the first time. So could you. No one spoke after that. When the meeting ended, the chairwoman extended her hand. If you ever consider consulting again, our team could use your expertise. Maybe, I said. But I don't plan clocks for people who ignore time. She smiled faintly. Fair enough. I left the building around 11:15 a.m. The sky was clear, the air clean, that kind of late-morning calm where you realize noise was optional all along. At the edge of the parking lot, I stopped and looked back. The windows reflected sunlight like rows of silent screens. Inside that building, a dozen small systems still ran. Air filters, sensors, security loops. All parts I once touched. It struck me how revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like a report, signed in triplicate. In my car, I checked my watch. 11:17. I reset the stopwatch I'd started days earlier, the one that had been running since the night I created folder, clock. It had lapsed time. 87 hours, 16 minutes. Precise. Symmetrical. Closed loop. I drove without music, just the hum of the road. At the first red light, my phone buzzed again. A message from Calvin Audit concluded. Policy implemented. Thank you for keeping the system honest. I typed back one line. A system's only honest when someone times it. I didn't send it. Some truths don't need to travel. Instead, I parked by a small diner 2 miles away, the one where maintenance crews used to grab lunch during snow shifts. The waitress recognized me. Hey, Mr. Shepard, haven't seen you in a while. Been on the clock, I said. Coffee? Black, no sugar, she poured, and the sound of it filled the silence between us. Slow, steady, real. As I sat there, I thought about the 5 rules I'd lived by for years, the same ones I'd built into every system I touched. Every process must prove itself under pressure. Never automate trust. Logs. Tell stories people hide. Precision. Beats passion. When the clock hits the truth, stop. Don't push it further, I smiled quietly. Rule number 5 had finally arrived. When I finished my coffee, I left a $9 tip. Not generous, not symbolic, just clean math, and walked out. Back home, I opened the laptop one last time. Folder, clock. Inside, screenshots, logs, statements. Everything that mattered. I selected all, zipped them into one file, and renamed it Closed at 9:01 Zip. Then I dragged it into the archive folder and clicked Delete. The system asked, Are you sure? Yes, I whispered, and just before I closed the lid, I looked at the stopwatch still glowing on my phone. Reset. That's how closure sounds when it's clean. Not as applause, not as anger, but as silence that finally runs on time. 2 weeks passed. No calls, no apologies. No, we owe you. Just silence, the kind that has weight and shape. I spent those 2 weeks doing what I'd always done, fixing small things. The kitchen light that flickered at 7:03 p.m., the leaky faucet that whispered at night, the hinge that complained quietly until you noticed it. Order, in small doses, still mattered. One afternoon, I went for a drive past the industrial park. From the road, I could see the company's sign, repainted, brighter, cleaner. A new slogan underneath: precision, integrity, time. Someone had learned something. I pulled over across the street and watched through the windshield. Employees were leaving for lunch. Same rhythms, different faces. A younger man now stood where I once parked. His badge flashed under sunlight. He reminded me of myself 15 years ago. Quiet, focused, maybe a little too loyal. For a second, I thought of walking in, saying hello, maybe warning him that systems remember nothing but data. But then I realized he'd have to learn that himself. Everyone does, eventually. I turned the ignition off. The ticking of the cooling engine sounded almost like a clock. Steady, mechanical, honest. A text came in from Calvin. Board approved full compliance restructure. The Shepard clock is now active company-wide. Attached, final memo. I opened the document. 12 words again, just like that first one. Integrity system deployed. All approvals time-stamped at point of origin. 12 words. But this time, they meant something. For the first time in months, I laughed. Quiet, short, genuine. The kind of laugh that tastes like relief, not revenge. At 3:18 p.m., I closed the file and deleted the message. The sky was pale blue, the air clean. I thought about all those meetings, policies, memos, and phrases like realignment and agility. None of them had ever meant what they said. But time always does. I looked at my watch, 3:19, and realized something. The clock on my wrist was running 3 seconds fast. For most people, that's nothing. For me, it meant the world had finally moved a little ahead of me, and I didn't mind. Because after all those years of keeping everything perfectly aligned, it felt good to let something run on its own. 3 weeks later, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a simple brass pocket watch. No note, no card. Just an engraving on the back. To the man who kept us on time. I knew who sent it. Probably Calvin, maybe the chairwoman. Doesn't matter. It wasn't about gratitude. It was about symmetry. Closure in an object that doesn't lie. I wound it once, gently. The second hand began to move, smooth and deliberate. I listened to the tick. Clean, exact, honest. That sound filled the room like memory. For 15 years, my days were measured by machines, reports, and other people's urgency. Now the only ticking that mattered was this one, small and personal. I placed it on the desk beside my old company badge. 2 symbols, one of identity, one of time. Both served their purpose. Both now still. Later that night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights blink on one by one. Somewhere in that same city, someone was sitting in a conference room explaining why a policy needed better oversight. Maybe they'd mention the Shepherd clock. Maybe they wouldn't. Doesn't matter. Systems don't need names to stay honest. They just need someone to start the timer. At 9:01 p.m., I looked at my phone. The symmetry made me smile. The hour that once ended, everything now began something else. Not revenge, not triumph, just peace calibrated to silence. I picked up the pocket watch and turned it over one last time. The ticking was steady. If you listen closely enough, that's what fairness sounds like. Not applause, not shouting, just a second hand keeping its promise. I whispered to myself, not for anyone to hear. Justice doesn't shout. It clicks. And that was it. The story ended exactly where it should, on time. That was my story. Proof that dignity doesn't need to shout to win. Subscribe to the Office Revenge Diaries for more stories of quiet, clean justice. Because revenge ends where precision begins, and fairness always keeps time.